This one particular section I thought would be best done by itself, as I don't want it to get lost in a huge stream, which I'm going to do where I'm covering the entirety of the American Rescue Plan. Excuse me, I just had some toast. Anyway, now this is section 201, or the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund, right? Where they appropriate $128,554,800,000, right? Now, this section B, or it's really it's A, small a, 2, big B is what it is, right? Really it's a little b, but public control of funds, right? This provision here. Control of funds provided under subsection A to B, under this, right? And title to materials, equipment, and property purchased with such funds shall be in an agency, and a public agency shall administer such funds, materials, equipment, and property, and shall provide such services. Now, what is this affecting? A to B. A to B. Using funds reserved under subparagraph A. Provide equitable services in the same manner as provided under section 1117 of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 to students and teachers in non-public schools, right? So private schools, right? So in other words, what this is saying is that any material, equipment, or property purchased with the funds granted under this section to a private school means that the ownership of that material, of that equipment, of that property is actually owned by the federal government, right? It's actually owned by the government. And so any money received and any money used to buy materials, equipment, and property can be taken away at any time whatsoever. They can do what they want with it. And that's just to private schools, right? As it says, non-public schools, which is private schools, right? And so I just want to say, beware buying equipment and property. Now, in terms of materials, right, if you're buying like napkins, toilet paper, or just paper, things that are going to be used up and thrown in the trash rather quickly, not necessarily that big of a deal, right? However, if you're going to be purchasing any property with this in order to help with the education, because what they want here is evidence-based interventions such as summer learning, extended day comprehensive after-school programs, or extended school year programs, right? In order to make up for the loss of education that students have suffered as of COVID-19, right? As the reaction measures to COVID-19. And so, yeah, I think this is actually incredibly dangerous, because if they can do this here, then who's to say that they can't do that to any private enterprise, right? Or to any private individual, if you got a stimulus check and you used it to buy a gun and they had a provision like this in there, technically that gun is owned by the federal government and they can take it without having to provide any compensation because they own it, right? And so I just want to make sure that private schools are aware that any funds received from this and used to buy materials, equipment, and property, all that's owned by the federal government, right? And so I think this is dangerous. I think it's important for people to know. And so that is kind of just the extent of this stream here, is just talking about this one right here, is that they want to own and have control over all material, equipment, and property that a private school purchases with these funds. And so, I just hope that, I'm pretty sure they have lawyers who are going to look through this and find this and know it, but this is not right, in my opinion. Because if they can do it to a non-public school, then who's to say they can't do it to an individual or to a private company, right? Anything you buy shall be, the title of which shall be in a public agency, and a public agency shall administer such funds, materials, equipment, and property. Right? And this is just, they're literally just talking about money provided to non-public schools. Right? It says to students and teachers in non-public schools. Right? Which makes it even kind of worse, because then it's like students who get something from this, it's like they can take that. Teachers who get something from this, they don't own it. And yeah, that's how I interpret this. If you interpret it another way, feel free to let me know. I may just be ignorant in this, but from what I'm reading here is public control of funds. Control of funds provided under this to non-public schools, and the title to that property, right? You put in materials and equipment, right? But equipment and materials, those things, equipment's going to be used up rather quickly, in my opinion. Materials, I don't think is all that consequential, because if you're talking materials in terms of like pencils and pens, like, yeah, they'll own those and they'll be able to take those from you. Equipment like lawnmowers in order to keep the grounds up, yeah, they'll own that. But I think property is the big one here, where if any property is purchased with funds granted by the federal government for COVID-19 relief to these private schools, then title to that property shall be in a public agency, and the public agency will administer over it, which means they'll just have control over it. Right? They'll have control over the property, they'll have control over the equipment, they'll have control over the materials. So, they call this the American Rescue Plan, but this little subsection right here tells me that, it's more about owning America than it is about rescuing them. So, yeah, I just wanted to make sure that this stream was kind of set apart and on its own, so that way it wouldn't get lost in a large stream, because I am going to be doing a large stream over the entirety of this bill. And I just came across this and found it alarming, and just wanted it to be brought to people's attention. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for following. And stay tuned, because I'm going to be back probably later today with a full stream of the American Rescue Plan. Thank you very much.